So welcome, Roxanne. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today. Just
Well, I started out my career at Deloitte & Touche. I was a partner there when I left. I worked in both consulting and in audit. I specialized in aerospace and defense and mergers and acquisitions. I really enjoyed technology. It was the foundation, as you know, of an aerospace company is technology. And so since I spent so much time in aerospace and defense, and I also love mergers and acquisitions, by the way, that I just fell in love with being involved in technology for the rest of my career. And so that's what I've really done, whether it's in a consulting capacity, an investment capacity. I've chaired a private equity investment fund, focused in a broad range of different companies, but technology being one area, as well as working with venture capitalists and others, and being on several boards over the course of years, including places like Ericsson, obviously foundational in 5G technology, and AbbVie, which is biotechnology, right? And now a SaaS companies up in Silicon Valley at Freshworks and CrowdStrike. So it's been a lot of fun. I've had several careers in my career, which I clearly have, and they've all been exciting. I was a CFO at Hughes Electronics, and I was president of DirecTV and ran that for a while. So I've done a lot of different things in my career, and it's been fun.
great. In fact, I remember the last time we had you on was a bunch of years ago when you were on the board of Target, and they were going through that security issue, if I remember correctly.
The cybersecurity breach in 2014 that fundamentally, I wound up being chairman of the board at that time and spending 5 months in Minneapolis, which I said CEO before the first snow, because we'd let our CEO go, and I was there at the request of the board to stay until we found a new one. And I just didn't want to be in Minneapolis in the wintertime. But luckily, we found Brian Cornell in late August of
and he's still there, right?
He's still there, 10 years later. Yeah.
Great. So let's get down to business here. I'm going to so I talked about boards and CEOs not playing it safe anymore. How would you view that? Would you agree? Would you?
Look, I'm involved with companies where they were founded on AI technologies like CrowdStrike. It's fundamentally an AI stack that runs CrowdStrike, right? And all the way to AbbVie, who is obviously major embracing what it's going to do for drug discovery and clinical trials and everything else as it relates to that industry, to places like Verizon that's looking at AI at the edge and how they can support that, et cetera. So, I see a broad range. In the company that I mentioned, I chaired up until last year, we closed the fund. I chaired an investment committee for a private equity fund that was based in the mid-market. And we saw everything there in between. So you're just seeing a lot going on, Vijay. Everybody's involved in AI in some capacities. The question is it just use cases? Are they playing it safe? Or are they really looking at it as innovation, which clearly, CrowdStrike was founded on it. AbbVie knows that it's its future. It has to be involved with it. So it's really a broad range of how companies are approaching it. But you absolutely cannot play it safe. You used the Target example, and I want to use that because that's sort of, for me, I go back to that a lot, and I actually was thinking about this last night. So Target in 2009, there was a board member, Saul Trujillo, and we've talked about this publicly. They actually let us talk about this publicly. We staged a digital intervention. And what was a digital intervention? Why did we do that? Target at that time was, I will say, dabbling in the web and online sales. We had a small online sales business for roughly $1 billion. And so we were like, this industry is changing dramatically, and it's changing because of technology, and it's changing because of one player, and that's Amazon. And either we're going to embrace this technology or we're not, right? And so at that time, I actually wrote this down, so I brought my notebook up here. At that time, 2009, Target was a $64 billion company, and Amazon was a $24 billion company. So we staged this digital intervention. All the senior team from Target came down to the Ritz-Carlton down in South Orange County. We brought in third parties and data and all kinds of information to say, look, this industry is going to change. It's going to change dramatically. We've got to make some change. So fast forward to 2023, Target's a $107 billion company, and Amazon's a $574 billion company. Now, why is that? It's not just web sales, right? It's Amazon Web Services and all the things. But they looked at it as an innovation, a technology that they built a much bigger platform on. And Target was just looking at it as, I'll call it a use case. And that's where we are today.
So do you think it's time for an AI intervention?
I do. I think that every company that doesn't realize that this is going to, I don't care who you are, this is going to change your company dramatically. And those that embrace and ride the top of that wave are going to be successful, and those that don't won't be here. I mean, I really fundamentally believe that. Vijay and I are working on a research project together, and it's around AI governance. And we interviewed someone the other day, and I've never heard Vijay quiet. I've known. Have you heard Vijay quiet? Raise your hand if you've heard Vijay quiet.
You haven't talked to my family yet.
Okay, well. So we're interviewing, and we get off this interview, and I said to Vijay, you were so quiet. I've never heard you that quiet. This is a person working in policy in Washington around what it's going to do to societal impacts of AI, right? And this person was so emphatic that this change was going to be so dramatic, and it was going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And he went into detail.
Yes.
And it silenced you.
It did.
And, he was so passionate about this. And, I was I was followed up with this guy the other day, because I actually saw him in New York last week. And I said, you were so passionate about this. And he said, look, there's a 30% chance that, he says, I think there's an 80% chance I'm right. Even if there's a 30% chance I'm right, you've got to do something about it. So you have to be planning today. You can't sit around and wait for it to happen to you. Even if there's only a 30% chance that I'm right versus the 80% chance that I believe that I'm right, then companies, boards, everybody needs to be planning for this. Governments today. So I just find it, this is, to me, this is the most important thing that's happened in my career. And I've been through a lot of technology changes in my career, and a lot of different technologies, satellite, to all the different things that Hughes did in the aerospace industry to, everything in between. And I've never seen anything that I thought was going to be more important than this. Oh, my mic is not working correctly.
Well, hopefully you heard all that because. Okay, good.
Sorry, I talk loud too. So.
Wow. So that's sort of, it's interesting. So it is so transformative. I mean, I think that was my message too. But you were talking about this gentleman who was talking about how transformative this is going to be. There's a lot of, yesterday when we were thinking about, we had the chief economist of PIMCO speak. One of the things she brought up, which was a little bit unexpected, was because everybody talks about AI bias. And she says, what we fail to acknowledge is the bias of executive teams as well. 100%. And what I think you highlighted is one of the things she said was, we have to think about the confidence intervals around what people believe and what they're projecting into the future. And so whether we realize it or not, people have these inbuilt biases about what's the scope of the disruption? Like how far away is it? What might it look like? And they tend to stay within sort of the lanes that they know. But AI actually forces you to widen the aperture and consider a far different set of opportunities, what we would call things on the tail end of the distribution, which is these unlikely events are more likely to happen, and maybe your company should be the one that is pushing towards some of these extreme solutions.
They should be, and I think if you're not investing in AI, you're not investing in the technology, it starts with talent and training and all those types of things, right? You got to have the right people, you've got to make the right investments, and as someone said earlier, the CFO said, I hope you're right. I was actually in a meeting the other day, and we had a well-known Harvard professor there, and this person said, I've seen all these technologies come and go, blah, blah, blah. This one's being really, really hyped, and I don't know. And I was thinking, holy cow, yeah, this one's real. And so, and I'm not a Harvard professor, but I think, I think that is, we got to, all of us, whether it's in academia, whether it's in businesses, whether it's in government, whether it's in our own selves and how we educate ourselves, we've got to invest in this. And you know that this is my personal journey here, is to invest in myself in AI, because I feel like it's so important as a director, as an investor, as an advisor to other people. How can you advise people or invest yourself or be on a board if you don't understand this technology?
Yeah, so actually talking about boards, let's ask you that question. So how are boards interacting with sort of companies today on their AI strategies? I mean, you talked about obviously the cross-section of companies. Some are more forward than others, but what do you recommend, or what do you see, and then what do you recommend?
Well, every company should be talking about their AI strategy. It should be part of their business strategy, how AI accelerates their business strategy, in my view, innovates their business strategy, supports their business strategy, but AI should be fundamental. There should be an AI strategy that supports it. Business strategy first, AI strategy that supports or pushes it or innovates it, helps you get there faster in terms of what you want to do. So I think there's, the conversations are being had in the boardrooms around AI. Some boardrooms are, more around the use cases and are going more slowly. And as you said in your opening charts, I mean, a lot of people are risk averse. I loved what the one gentleman said in the panel before. Let's build in the guardrails to the technology so the teams can run with the innovation. And so, privacy and algorithmic bias and regulatory and all the things that we need to build in, that should just be, teams shouldn't have to worry about that. They should go do their deal, go do their thing, make it happen. And if they are free to, if we allow them the freedom, I always say, at Target, we went through, and this is what I talked about last time you had me here, was around in 2014 when we had the big breach and we had to really fundamentally take a look at ourselves. We thought we were the best retailer in the industry and we were this and we were that and blah, 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 blah. We did this big 24,000-hour study that summer. This is also public knowledge. We've also talked about this. With the team before we got the new CEO, and we said, we found out that in fact we weren't, because we had an internal bias. We had myopic view of ourselves. We had myopic view of our industry and how we fit into that industry. And I think we're in another phase of where this myopic vision that companies tend to have, teams tend to have, CEOs tend to have, perhaps some, not all. Obviously, we have massive innovators, and I'm involved with a lot of great innovators. But I think getting out of that myopic vision is going to be critical to embracing this and really realizing the potential of it. Because I really believe this is the most incredible thing that's happened in my career.
So, when we previously spoke, you talked about this cross-section that we just referred to, but even the companies that are further ahead, the ones that actually have an AI strategy that seems reasonable at first glance, but 3 months later you're back again because the technology has moved faster than you think, and that's why we've titled this conference the way it's been titled.
Yeah, we had a situation where we had a board meeting, and 3 months later, the CEO and the team came and said, "Look, we got to change the strategy. Things have moved that fast that we've got to change fundamentally what we told you 3 months ago." And I was telling this at a conference that I was doing with a bunch of venture capitalists, and one guy says, "Well, I'd get rid of the management team if that was the case." And I thought, well, you know what? This is a time of incredible fast-paced innovation, and I was proud of them for embracing that change and saying, we got to do something different, and they were right. And we even validated that they were right with other people coming in to take a look at it. So I think, we've got to think differently. You can't think, well, oh my God, I would fire them because they came and said 3 months later they got to change the strategy. Well, you know what? Strategy moves fast in this kind of a world.
In fact, you should reward that behavior.
Exactly. I was very, very proud of them for having the courage to come in and say, look, 100% got to change, and this is why, and they supported it, and it was fantastic.
So when you look at the traditional role between boards and CEOs, for example, sort of the idea historically has been that CEOs should come up with the strategy, and obviously are responsible for execution, perhaps through the CEO or others, and boards are sort of in the governance role. Do you think that relationship still holds in the context of AI? Do boards need to be much more proactive in helping shape strategy?
I think you have to push it. I mean, I think clearly if you're not seeing the type of embracing and innovation, if we're just talking being conservative and putting all the, and all that, and we're only talking about use cases that's around productivity, and they're pretty basic, it's customer service or it's whatever, and those are all good, don't get me wrong, those are good things to do, good. But there's bigger things to be had here, and there are bigger opportunities and strategic opportunities that are going to be missed, and there will definitely be companies that are going to exit. There will be companies that will be gone because of this, and there will be companies that are going to rise up that we don't even know who they are today. And that's, that's the exciting part about technology change. But if you want to be on a board or you want to be an executive in this environment, you've got to embrace this.
Yeah, I would agree, because one of the examples that I will say in this group, I don't say publicly too often, is always think about, are there early warning signals that companies will exit like we saw in the internet era? Mm-hmm. And so the one company that comes to mind often is Intel. They were absolute kings of the semiconductor world.
Absolutely.
And they're a shadow of themselves. And NVIDIA obviously is the $3 trillion sort of giant. And I think with that, and if you look at sort of all the research that's been done on sort of industry structure, one of the things it says is the first layer to feel the effect are the closest to the lower end of the stack in this case, because there's something called the bullwhip effect. So the customers will feel it. I mean, the end users will feel it later, but you start seeing the changes lower. And I think that's an example for me of a company that well, they missed mobile too, but it's going to be very, very costly if you miss this.
It's going to be so expensive. And look, it not only requires a technology investment, it requires a huge people investment.
Yes.
Right? And I think, just as they were talking about medtech earlier, having to invest in your company in bringing in the right kinds of talent to change the company fundamentally. Right? And that's what's going to happen across the board. Right? Obviously at AbbVie, we're having to bring in tons of talent in this area. We can't do this without that talent. And you say, how do you compete at an AbbVie with, Silicon Valley? Well, you compete because of purpose. AbbVie has a purpose to enhance lives, save lives, create, better opportunities for families to have great lives with their loved ones. So that purpose is important to this generation, and so we play on that purpose. Like, you have a real purpose here. There's a career because you have a purpose, and I think you got to find your way how you're gonna get this talent. But that's that's the way we get it.
No, to give you an example of how expensive this game is getting, Google just they wanted a particular individual. That's what the newspaper articles say anyway, to work at Google. So they actually licensed all the IP from his prior company, and they're essentially paying $2.6 billion to get this one person and perhaps a small team around him.
Yeah, I'm hearing these conversations all the time in companies, because that's just the reality. If you want the right people, you're going to have to pay, and sometimes it's big. Now not everybody can pay $2.6 billion, but you are going to have to invest in this.
Right, and again, you're competing against the players in your industry and perhaps some startups, but you're not competing often against Google, or at least hopefully that's not true for many companies. So getting back to the boards, what are the main responsibilities of boards around roles and responsibilities around AI?
Well, obviously it's strategy. How does it fit into the business strategy? How do you set roles and responsibilities? What are the risks and reward and opportunities? So risk, like I said, I loved what the person said in the last panel about building in the, taking care of the risks as part of the technology as much as you can, such that you can allow teams to innovate. Because the governance process around this, you and I have been spending a lot of time on governance. Everybody is really struggling with, what does that really mean? We ask people from directors to executives to government people to all these different people around, how are you thinking about AI governance? And, it's something it's a frontier. Like, we're at the beginning of the frontier, and so everybody's sort of thinking about it and thinking about how to do it. Boards have to be engaging on it. Like, how are we ensuring that what we're getting is the right kinds of outcomes? That's the most important thing, right? Is it, especially if you're talking about medical use cases or patient data or patient outcomes. You're using patient information to actually diagnose disease or to help with drug discovery. And how are you ensuring that what the models are telling you are in fact accurate, right? So there's so much that goes into this, and there's so much we don't know yet. But that's why Vijay and I are working on this project, because we're trying to understand from some of the best minds out there, like, how are they thinking about this, and how should we be thinking about this? And we hope to help
others.
Help others in how they should think about this.
So what are some of the best practices around AI governance? Everything like, are they meeting more often? Do we need an AI committee or a digital committee?
I think at least in my experience, and I think the people with whom we have spoken all are meeting more often, right? All are meeting more often on AI and talking about AI in their boardrooms. So that's good. Okay, that's the first step in governance. AI, lots of companies have, not lots, but many companies have technology committees, and many of them are using that to do AI. I don't know yet whether we need a separate AI committee. Do we need to detect? But somewhere there needs to be a focus on whether it's a separate AI committee or a technology committee that's purposed for that, really thinking more deeply about this issue on behalf of the board. Because in a board meeting, you don't have as much time as you'd like to have for one topic. Although I think this is a dominating topic, but I do think you've got to really think about how are you going to get the amount of time that you need. And a lot of times what I do on boards, I'm the lead director on 2 of the boards here that we mentioned earlier, and one of the things that we do when we want to spend more time on a topic is we just say, we're spending a special day. This day we're going to spend on R&D. This day we're going to spend on a deep dive on AI. This day we're going to, whatever it is. So take a deep dive day, take a deep dive 2 days, whatever it is. This technology is so important that bringing in third parties to understand how you might be disrupted, bringing in third parties to understand how the technology is moving and how it impacts your industry in general, all types of things that you can use third parties to do, much like we did with our digital innovation with Target. Bring in third parties to help the team see in an objective way, what's really happening.
And do you push on scenario planning too?
Absolutely. I mean, I think scenario planning is critical. And even the best scenario planning, as you know, is not perfect. But at least it's forcing you to think about the what ifs. And there's so many what ifs with this technology that even asking the right questions is hard for some of the teams. That's why I think third parties really help in doing this. Just like you do a third party to come in on a cybersecurity tabletop exercise, I think having a third party in an AI exercise around your technology, around your industry, around what's happening and how you could be disrupted, I think all of that is really, really helpful.